When it comes to your retirement, do you want to have the same old plan everyone else has? Of course not. You're unique and have your own goals and dreams. Don't be treated just like a number. This is your retirement. So it's time to think differently. And you're in luck because you've found the Retire Your Way podcast with ILG Financial. At ILG Financial, you won't find generic, run-of-the-mill plans containing the same old cookie-cutter solutions. Dave, Chase, and the ILG Financial team focus on building one retirement at a time using their Think Differently philosophy. And that means your own comprehensive plan with customized solutions built to achieve just one goal, yours. So put on your Think Differently hats and get ready to take back control of your retirement today and for all the tomorrows to come. ILG Financial's Retire Your Way podcast was created just for you, and it's starting right now.
When it comes to retirement, do you want to have the same old plan everyone else has? Of course not. You're unique. You have your own goals and dreams. Don't be treated just like a number. This is your retirement, so it's time to think differently. And you're in luck because you found the Retire Your Way podcast with ILG Financial. I'm Ron Stutz along with Chase Lopez, and today we're going to talk about scams, particularly those that are aimed at older people. This is a very important topic. 540-720-5656 is your number to call if you'd like to have a conversation with ILG Financial, with Chase Lopez or Dave Lopez. 540-720-5656. Or you can simply go to ilgfinancial.com to find out all about the company. And today is a topic that I've been looking forward to doing here, Chase, because as everybody knows, scammers have continued to step up their game, and things like AI and deepfakes are helping them to steal older Americans' money and lots of personal information out there. Today, Chase is here to talk to us about some new scams that are taking place. My goodness, we didn't need any more. And we should all be aware of these things. Chase, how are you today?
Oh, good morning, Ron. Always good to be with you. And yeah, I know we were talking before we turned the mics on here, but this is a huge topic right now, and I think we couldn't be talking about it at a better time.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit different than other topics we do, right? Which oftentimes are about either markets or accounts or things like that. This can apply to anyone. Right, and I think that's why it'll be super useful for the listeners here today.
Well, first of all, this AI thing just scares me to death because it's gotten so advanced. You don't know what's real and what's not. You see an image on social media or on the internet. You don't know if it's actually real or something that somebody put together from an old photo or whatever the case may be. But these deep fakes and everything that we're talking about are so dangerous for older Americans in particular. And I'm just really anxious to get into this topic when it comes to scammers who target seniors' bank accounts and 401ks and try to steal their money in any way they can. What can you tell us about that and all the latest in your efforts to fight it?
Yeah, so it's an excellent point, Ron, and these scammers, really, they are getting more sophisticated because of this technology, right? And they are being very intentional in who they target, right? And they're targeting older Americans for a variety of reasons, right? The first being that typically older Americans are the ones that are the least tech savvy, if you just kind of look at the population writ large.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
On their end, they're thinking, okay, well, these are the people that we're going to target for these things. So many seniors are as savvy as anyone about avoiding scams, right? Even if they know about scams and things of that nature. But these AI tools are helping these scammers generate more and more scam content, and that's over email, text, phone calls, social media, which makes it a lot more difficult to spot.
Yeah, why don't you give us an example of that kind of thing that's happening?
Yeah, so there's a couple of examples, right? There's things like deep fake audio, and it lets scammers impersonate other people. So they could impersonate government officials. I've even seen things where they impersonate like family members of yours, right? If they're able to kind of get a file of their voice, right? So they could literally impersonate anybody, right, over the phone by using some of this deep fake audio technology. Another example is fraudulent texts or fraudulent emails that are used to mimic real communications from either the bank, the government agency, a familiar company, or again, a family member, right? So, you receive a weird text or a weird email. That can be kind of the start of some sort of scam or scammer that's targeting you.
Scams have been around for a very long time, but in recent years, it has really gone up. It has really increased, primarily because of all these advancements in technology.
Oh, absolutely. I looked at some stuff before we hopped on today. In 2024, so this is 2 years ago, scams reported to the Federal Trade Commissions by adults age 60 or older, so this is the cohort we're talking about, reached $2.4 billion, up 26% from 2023. And that number increases, or has been increasing exponentially because of all of this technology and because of AI, right? These scammers are able to just cast a much wider net than they were able to before, which just drives up that number of scams. And there's also been an increase of scams involving losses of $100,000 or more, right? Wow. So scams of $100,000 or more, that's 1.6 billion of that 2.4 billion. So a majority of that is people losing in the 6 digits. And these older Americans, they're earmarked, and I kind of talked about this, right? They're earmarked by these scammers because of their kind of emotional vulnerability based on their age, and because oftentimes they're not, digitally as savvy as the younger generations. The scammers, unfortunately, they use things like fear, urgency, and misinformation to start to trick folks into, for lack of a better term, handing over their life savings, whether that be the 401k and the bank accounts.
Yeah, a lot of things going on out there that folks need to be aware of. But give us a look at some of the financial scams that are going on right now to target seniors out there.
Yeah, so what we'll do is I've got 4 common ones that we've either seen or heard about. So we'll just walk through each of those 4. All of them are a little bit different, but the overall point here is just to get on folks' radar. If they start hearing some of the things we talk about, that should be a red flag in their head. Yeah. And they should get with someone that they trust to evaluate the situation, right? It's one of the things that, kind of shameless plug here in the middle of the podcast, right? But one of the things that we help a lot of folks with, or this is one of the things that we help a lot of folks with, is if something comes across their desk and they're either a little bit confused or a little bit unsure, oftentimes we'll look at that with clients to figure out, hey, how legit is this text, email, phone call, whatever the case may be. Yeah. So let's just jump right into it, right? The first one are what we call investment scams. They're aimed at seniors, right, in particular, and they promise high guaranteed returns with little risk in things like cryptocurrency ventures or phony high yield investments, things like that. A typical example would be a scammer pretends to be some sort of investment manager or an investment company and tells the person, right, tells the victim that they can make a lot of money in an investment, and it's like a cryptocurrency investment, or it has, guaranteed 20% year returns forever. And they ask these potential victims to wire money to a phony, bank account in another country, right? And to send, and what the scammer will do is they'll send the victim fake account statements over time to show that the investment return is rising, to kind of get the victim off of the scammer's scent, only for the victim to realize, a few months later, oh my goodness, the money's not there, right? And I'm out, however much they end up spending.
And these statements that they send out look so real that it's hard to spot that there's anything wrong with them at all.
Oh, 100%, right? And over time, these criminals, these scammers, will start to draw on someone's IRA savings, right? So hypothetically, let's play this out. A scammer calls the victim. The victim gives them a little bit of money, right? Because the victim is a little bit cautious. Well, the victim starts to receive these fake statements, which, as you mentioned, look real, but are not. They start to receive these fake statements, and then they say, all right, well, the statement looks good. It looks like my account's going up on paper. So now I'll just give them more money. That's how it can slowly, these scammers can just drip, drip, drip and take, someone's entire retirement savings without them really knowing it, by using a lot of this, fake AI generated content and documents and things of that nature.
How do you protect yourself from that kind of thing, from this particular investment scam?
Yeah, so the first thing you want to do is you want to call the institution that the scammer claims to work for to verify their identity and make sure that any account that you've opened is legitimate. So one I've seen in the past is the scammer will say, hey, I work for one of these big investment companies, right? One thing to know about all these investment companies is they have a a 1-800 line where you can call, and if you go on their website, it will be, hey, if you think you've been contacted by a scammer, they will have a phone number for you to call. You call that number and you say, hey, I received this call from this person named John. They say they work for you. They say they opened up accounts with you in my name. Can you please verify these transactions, this person, this situation? And they'll be able to do that for you on their end.
Right. Or not.
Or not, yes. And then that'll be a dead giveaway, right?
Yeah. And of course, there's the Federal Trade Commission and, guidelines that have been set in place, or roadblocks that have been set in place to keep these things from happening.
Yeah, so if you become the victim of one of these scams, right, the first thing I would say is report it, right? So report it to the FBI. They have a lot of resources dedicated to this. The Federal Trade Commission, as you mentioned, the financial regulators in our industry, so the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, FINRA as well is another regulating body. I would alert them. And you can also report it to your local police department and your local state attorney general's office. One thing, and I'll remind folks of this as we go through, the one thing with scams is oftentimes folks feel, the victims, they feel this sense of shame almost, or embarrassment is probably a better word.
Yeah, they're embarrassed by at someone taking advantage of them so easily.
That's right. So I would say don't just, because the inclination is to say it happened, right, and just kind of turtle and not do anything. You don't know what the remedy could be, right? It depends on the scam. But sometimes there are remedies, right? As far as, making you whole or somewhat whole if you fall victim to one of these scams. So please, if it ends up happening to you, don't hesitate to reach out to the authorities to make sure they have all of the, relevant information.
Another type of scam that happens all the time is when somebody is impersonating somebody with the government. And, anytime, you hear the words federal government, you think, oh boy, I better get myself together here, and this is legitimate if it's the federal government calling. But, that's certainly oftentimes not the case.
Very much not the case, right? Oftentimes, as you mentioned, those scammers will contact seniors by phone, email, or text, and they'll be saying, hey, I work for the IRS, or I work for Medicare, or I work for Social Security. Really, those three, right, especially for seniors, those are the ones where seniors are immediately like, oh my goodness, I need to make sure I get this taken care of, right? I need to make sure I'm good with the IRS. I need to make sure I'm good with Medicare and Social Security, which is why a lot of these scammers impersonate those agencies specifically. They may use a caller ID or some way of tricking your phone to say, hey, it said on my phone when they were calling, it said it was the IRS, so it must be the IRS. Yeah. And then they'll use AI to create fake voices to trick people, right? To think that they are, in fact, with the IRS or whatever the case may be.
Some of these things are hard to detect because it'll show up right there on your phone. It'll say it's the IRS or whatever. I don't know how. I personally do not know how they do these things, but the fact is that it happens and more people fall victim to it.
It's absolutely right. And I'm going to give a couple of examples of what they would say, right, for the folks, just so they can kind of identify these things. So if somebody calls from the IRS, quote unquote, right, or they claim to be from the IRS, I should say, and they say, hey, you owe back taxes, you need to make payment immediately, and you'll be arrested or deported if you don't pay that money, right?
Yeah, really.
One of the things that these scammers do is they try to create urgency, right? They try to create urgency to make sure that you're going to hand the money over in a quickly, timely fashion. When they say things like you're going to be arrested or deported by the IRS, that's an immediate red flag, right? The IRS does, if you were to get arrested for some sort of tax penalty or tax fraud or something like that, there's a long investigation involved, right? Sure. And quite frankly, I know this sounds kind of like duh, they probably wouldn't call you to warn you they're coming to arrest you. Right?
No, I don't think so.
It just happens, right? So, and typically more importantly, with most folks, if you owe a little bit in tax to the IRS, it's not an arrestable offense. First of all, they won't call you. They'll send you a letter, right, to say, hey, and I've seen this letter before, right? They say, hey, you owe this much taxes from your 2025 taxes. You underpaid. Please pay us. And, there's a small penalty involved, but they're certainly not going to arrest you if you underpay your taxes a little.
And if you can't pay it all at once, you can work out some kind of a payment plan. I mean, they're not going to.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So, with a lot of these, especially the government ones, one thing to keep in mind is They will send you correspondence, official correspondence in the mail, as opposed to calling or especially texting you. The IRS is not going to text you, right, about taxes that you are missing. So, I would say if you receive a call or a text, the fact that you're receiving a call or a text is a red flag in and of itself, right? You would have received some sort of correspondence and official correspondence in the mail from that agency, whatever agency is kind of looking over the issue that they are perpetrating.
I know that the scammers sometimes, involve your Social Security account. So many people rely so heavily on their Social Security, and, that's kind of scary when you get a call there and they're saying, this is the Social Security office and there's a problem here, and, so it's easy to pull those scams as well.
Oh, absolutely. So Social Security, they're all, the scammers will often say, hey, I'm with Social Security, and your Social Security account has been linked to some sort of crime, right? And then that'll kind of get the victim on the other end kind of scared, right? And immediately the victim on the other end may have their guard down and start, giving information that they shouldn't be giving to this random person on the phone. Again, Social Security, if there's an issue, they will reach out to you via mail and tell you, hey, here's the number to call, right? Oftentimes they will not call or text, in that manner.
Exactly.
And then the last one, or last example, right, is people pretending to be with Medicare, right? And they will call and the scammers will say, hey, either a claim or a benefit or a bill, right, from the doctors, it has not been paid for by Medicare. And they'll say, I'm calling from Medicare to get this rectified. And that's how they get the person on the other line starting to give information that they wouldn't normally give a stranger, right? So if you get a call from any of these government agencies and they reach out to you, that is an immediate red flag. They'll never initiate contact by phone, email, or text or social media. So again, just look out for any mail correspondence in the mail. That would be the reason for them reaching out. If someone calls you, that's an immediate red flag, right? They use the Postal Service to get a lot of this stuff out.
And nobody legitimate is going to ask you to send them money using crypto, or certainly not going to ask you to go out and buy a gift card from somewhere. I mean, that's just that's an old, tried and true scam that they've used for a long time, and I think most people are kind of aware of that kind of thing by now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And they'll never ask you to wire money, right? That's one that I know we didn't have on the outline here, Ron, but that's where people are getting caught nowadays is if they say if they're from the IRS or they're from Medicare or they're from Social Security and they say, hey, you need to wire money to this account immediately, that's an immediate red flag, right? Those government agencies will never require you to wire money to anywhere or any bank account, right? That's something that definitely folks want to be aware of. Just because when you wire money out to, especially a bank account outside of the United States, it's virtually impossible to get that money back, right? The money at that point is gone. So you just want to, if they ask you to wire money places, again, that's just kind of a red flag that should come up in your head as you're hearing that.
If you fall victim to this particular scam, what can you do?
Yeah, so with this one specifically, right, oftentimes if they impersonate the government agency, they're just trying to draw information out of you. So they're trying to draw your Social Security number out of you, your Medicare number out of you. They're trying to draw out all of this personal information. So the first thing that I would do is if you've fallen victim, right, and you get off the phone and you're like, oh my goodness, I think I gave this person way too much information who shouldn't have it. You would want to contact all the credit rating agencies and freeze your credit and report the scam. So report the phone number or the person that reached out to you and the agency that they said they were from. And by freezing your credit, what you're doing is you're stopping the scammer from potentially opening up a either credit card in your name or a line of credit in your name. So that would be the first step. And then much like we said before, you want to make sure that you alert the authorities, right, that you've been contacted by these people. And then just keep an eye on, bills coming in and things of that nature. Make sure nothing is kind of out of the ordinary there.
Yeah. What about if you're a victim of a tax scam? Isn't there a form that you can use to fight against that?
Yes. So if you're the victim of a tax scam, you want to file a paper 1040 tax return and attach to it a form 14039. That's the identity theft affidavit. If that happens, right, get with your financial professional or get with your accountant and they can kind of help you with that part of it. But yes, that's another reason why they look for, that personal information, that Social Security number and things like that, is sometimes these scammers will file a tax return on your behalf. That's completely wrong, right? And you need to get that rectified.
Chase, I was just thinking that probably the best thing to do when you are contacted by somebody like this and you feel like it's not legitimate, don't engage with them. Don't even get into a conversation with them.
That's excellent advice.
And for heaven's sake, don't say yes, because they can use a recording of your voice saying yes and then claim that you signed up for whatever, So I just wanted to mention that because that has happened to people that I know. You're listening to the Retire Your Way podcast. We're going to talk more about scams in just a moment. I wanted to remind you that our conversation is with Chase Lopez at ILG Financial. And the number to call if you'd like to get in touch with him is 540-720-5656. Today we're talking about scams that are directed at senior citizens. And boy, here's another big one that happens a lot. I just, we could call this romance scams. There are a lot of people out there who want to convince you that, they're legitimate love interests, and a lot of people fall in love with somebody all the way around the country, and, it's not legitimate at all. It's just somebody trying to squeeze some money out of you.
All of these scams are a little bit unique, right? I'm happy we're kind of talking about them in depth. Yeah. So remember, with the investment scams and the government scams that we just talked about, oftentimes those are quick and they try to create urgency, right? So they get you on the phone. They try to get you immediately to start giving information, giving personal information. They immediately start to try to get you to wire money, in the next couple of days or whatever the case may be. The romance scams are kind of on the other end. This is a very long, for lack of a better term, right? It's a long con by the scammer, right? And they will invest a lot of time to to steal your money, right? Social media romance scams, they attempt to exploit seniors who may be lonely or, seeking companionship, right? Sure. Nearly 1 in 6 adults, I was reading this the other day, nearly 1 in 6 adults over 50 say they or someone they know lost money in a scam like this, right? So this is very prevalent out there. This is one of the most common ones, right? Here's kind of how it works, right? The scammer, what they'll do is they'll create like fake profiles on either Facebook, Instagram, or any other social media sites, oftentimes dating sites as well. And they'll start to form relationships with somebody on the other end, right? And that would be the victim in this example, right? And the goal for that person, for the scammer, is to develop a trusted relationship with the victim over time, right? And these scammers, they tend to live far away, right? They can never meet the victim in person, or they're unwilling to do a video call for whatever reason. Yeah. And they'll communicate via text messaging apps as opposed to having a real phone number. What'll end up happening is they'll start to build this trust with the victim. And, it could be 2-3 months down the line. It could be years down the line, right? What they then start to do is start to ask the victim for money, right? And because this relationship has been built with the scammer, oftentimes the victim will start to send money to these out of country bank accounts and things of that nature. And the romance scammer on the other end will try to continue to get more and more money out of the victim by saying they have emergencies, or they can't pay their rent, or they can't do this or that. So definitely one that folks want to be aware of as they're kind of out there, especially in this social media AI kind of world that we're living in.
And sometimes they'll even ask you to do this silly thing, going to a store and buying gift cards. It's amazing how, people fall for that. And a cryptocurrency is sometimes involved as well. But again, with all these others, you have told us what we should do if this happens to you. What can victims of this particular romance scam do?
Yeah, so let's talk about what you should do prior to being scammed, and then, after you should be scammed, because those are two separate conversations, right? First thing, to kind of insulate yourself from this happening to you, right? You want to make sure that your privacy settings on your social media platforms limit who can see you and who can send you messages, and they limit it to the people that either you know or kind of in your area. And there are ways to do that with each of those social media apps. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, if you ever start to engage in conversation with folks online, there's a couple of red flags, right, that you should look for when you look at this person's profile, you're talking with them. Number one, if their profile on this either dating app or social media app, if it was created in the last, call it calendar year or so, right, that's a red flag, right? If it's a new account and this person is claiming they're, 50 years old, well, then why haven't they had an account up until this point, right?
Right.
So, a recent account opening, that's a red flag. And on all those social media sites, it'll show you when the account was opened or started. Another giveaway would be this person is, for lack of a better term, unwilling to either get on a video call or meet you in person after talking for a little bit, right? So if anyone ever asks you for money, right, that's obviously a red flag. But if you feel guilty, right, and you're like, hey, I want to help this person, then that person should be willing to meet you in person, right? So that's an immediate way to kind of legitimize this relationship, if it is in fact legitimate, is to ask that person to meet in person, right? Whether that be out for coffee or whatever the case may be.
Yep.
If they actually need the money, they will meet you for the coffee, right? And that's just the bottom line. If they're not willing to do that, that's a red flag. Now, if it happens to you, right? If you go down this road and the money is either sent, right, or is about to be sent, you almost certainly, right, want to report it to the FBI, right? These romance scams are the ones that end up costing people the most money because the money gets sent over time, right? So you want to make sure you alert the FBI, the FTC, your local police department. You want to alert all of your companies that your money's sitting with. So your bank account, your credit card companies, your investment account companies that are holding your investment accounts. You want to update all of your passwords as well. You may have shared some personal information that links directly back to your password. So you want to make sure you tackle all of these different kind of elements if you end up falling, a victim to this. But the best course of action is that prevention on the front end, right? And if you're feeling uneasy about it, right? If you're feeling like you don't know where this is going, or even a little bit of doubt, right? Just please contact someone that you trust, right? Whether that be a family friend, a daughter, a son, if that's your financial advisor, right? If you're like, hey, I'm not really sure how this is going, please don't feel like you need to isolate yourself. You definitely want to talk to another person and say, hey, am I missing something here, right? And that's the best way. Prevention is the best way.
You're listening to a conversation today about scams, particularly those directed at older people. And, of course, Chase Lopez is here from ILG Financial. I'll tell you how to get in touch with him and Dave Lopez and the folks at ILG in just a moment here. But I wanted to ask you about one other type of scam. And you mentioned earlier, and this is absolutely true, older people aren't nearly as tech savvy as those who are younger. And so they are therefore more susceptible to tech support scams. A lot of people getting in touch with you, offering to help with your computer or that kind of thing. Tell us about those, if you would, Chase.
Yeah, so with these tech support scams, you're absolutely right? This is kind of fraught for kind of the older generation. These scammers, they try to scare you into believing there is something wrong with your computer, right? And there's something wrong with your machine. And the goal of this scammer is to gain remote access to your computer. Because once they gain remote access to your computer, now they have access to everything. They have access to your personal information, your financial information. They even may have access to your passwords now, depending on how that's saved on your computer. If anyone is calling and trying to get remote access to your computer, that's a red flag there. Even if they say they're with tech support and they're here to fix your machine.
Well, you may get a phone call from somebody, but there are other ways that this works as well. Tell us about how that happens.
Yeah, so there is a couple ways of how this could go, right? There is kind of a bait and switch scheme that they'll use, and that starts with a pop-up warning on your screen that looks like it's from a well-known company, and it urges you to call a phone number for help. So it may pop up on your screen and say, hey, there's something wrong with your computer. Please give us a call immediately to rectify it. A couple of dead giveaways there if that happens to you, right? Number one, that same thing we talked about, urgency. If they're trying to create urgency, that should immediately be a red flag to you, and you should start pushing back a little bit, right? Or even hang up the phone, right? They're not going to make it that urgent, right? If there's something that needs to be done to your computer or anything like that. Then basically, once you call, the scammer asks you to give them remote access to your computer. And then what they do is they will get remote access to your computer. They'll input some sort of program on your computer that will log all of your keys moving forward, meaning all of the typing that you're going to do, they're going to log all of that. And what that allows them to do is that allows them to steal your passwords, steal your usernames, and then they can really just create a mess inside of your life with regards to like credit cards and things like that.
Wow. That's really scary when you think about it. And, with advancing technology these days, it's particularly scary. Again, I ask you this question at the end of every one of these categories. What can victims do if this happens to you? What can you do to protect yourself?
The reason why these scams work so well is they scare the victim into acting immediately, right? That urgency that I talked about is how they get people. So how to protect yourself? The first thing is you want to verify that any phone numbers or websites and links are legitimate. So let's take that example where we said the pop-up shows up on your computer and it says, hey, we're with X security company and call this number. The first thing you want to do is look up the company and see if that's actually their phone number. If it's not, that is your immediate red flag to know, hey, this is probably a scam. You also want to use unique and strong passwords as well as multi-factor authentication. So multi-factor, for those who don't know, that just means, hey, you type in your username and your password, and then the website will say, we're going to send you a text with a code, and then you type in the code. By having those unique, strong passwords, which I know we all get kind of annoyed with changing our passwords and stuff like that, but this is why it's so important to protect yourself from things like this. Use those unique, strong passwords, use the multi-factor authentication, and that will help with a lot of this tech support scams that are kind of out there.
Mm-hmm. Anything else you could do before this happens to you?
There's a couple of things, right? You could scan your device using an antivirus software that removes malware immediately. Use a trusted source with that. If you don't know who a trusted source is, I would get with someone that you trust. Again, that could be a tech-savvy nephew that you have, or whatever the case may be. But that's where you can start. Change your passwords and review all of your account statements on a regular basis, right? So look at that bank account statement, look at that credit card statement, look at that investment account statement to make sure there's no kind of irregularities there. And then again, going back to what we said before, if you become the victim of a scam, do not be embarrassed, right? Get with the FBI, right? And again, they dedicate a lot of resources to this issue. Get with the FCC, report it to your bank, report it to your investment company, report it to your credit card company and the credit rating agencies as well.
Well, Chase, I think I've actually benefited from this conversation as well, and I know everybody should be a little more familiar with all these techniques that people use trying to bilk you from your money. Mm-hmm. And it's a really sad situation, and particularly older people are susceptible to this kind of thing for a number of reasons. But you have done a lot today to help people avoid these kinds of situations.
Yep. I would say the big takeaway, right, would just be, trust your gut, right? If something feels off, it probably is. Get with someone that you trust that can verify these things, and then alert the authorities accordingly. And as I mentioned before, there are people out there to kind of help you with this stuff. So lean on those people as you can.
This has been a different kind of conversation today on the ILG Financial Retire Your Way podcast. Income, legacy, growth, it's all right here at ILG Financial, and it's about helping you plan for retirement your way so you can achieve your financial goals. You can call ILG Financial at 540-720-5656 or go online to ilgfinancial.com to learn more. Our thanks to Chase Lopez today, and we'll talk to you next time on the Retire Your Way podcast from ILG Financial. I'm Ron Stubbs. The information provided is for educational purposes only and is not intended as investment advice for any individual or entity. All information contained herein is believed to be from reliable sources. However, we make no representation as to its completeness or accuracy. The views presented today are those of Dave Lopez and do not necessarily represent the views of the Alpha Star Capital Management, LLC. The opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and do not constitute financial, legal, or tax advice. Please consult your financial professional before executing any financial strategy. Investment advisory services offered through Alpha Star Capital Management, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Alpha Star and ILG Financial, LLC are independent entities. SEC registration does not constitute an endorsement of the firm by the Commission, nor does it indicate that the advisor has attained a particular level of skill or ability.
Hey, Chase Lopez here. Thanks for listening to Retire Your Way with ILG Financial, our podcast. Make sure you head to our YouTube channel as well to check out our video series, Retire Your Way with ILG Financial. Also, don't forget to subscribe and like our videos there so you can be alerted for any future videos. Talk to you soon.